I am a playwright and I wrote Water by the Spoonful. And the next part in that journey is called The Happiest Song Plays Last. And essentially, this group of plays, each one is intended to stand alone and be its own story, but together they tell the story of a coming of age of an American young man who is bright and witty and adventuresome and is also deeply troubled. The Happiest Song Plays Last finds him quite a few years out from his military service, struggling to get back into civilian life at a moment when he has a wonderful opportunity, which is to go to Jordan and act in a movie. And so it combines some of his past troubles with a moment when he's really poised to overcome them as a young man and to like kind of fully step into his manhood, while also reliving some of his difficult military experiences, because the movie that he is acting in is in fact dealing with the Marines in Iraq. So Yasmin is Elliot's cousin, and this is a family in which extended family is extremely close. So though they have the label of cousin, they feel like siblings. They grew up together, they've seen the world through the same eyes, but they're extremely different individuals and also have some real divisions between them. One of them is class. So Elliot grew up in a more working class family, went to public high school in Philadelphia, which was a crumbling school, and the Marines presented him with a really viable option to still kind of have a respectable life. He really wasn't on a college track. His cousin Yasmin grew up in a more middle-class family and really was on a college track, and we follow her being a professor, and she lives in two worlds. She juggles a rich and prestigious intellectual life with a yearning to go back to her roots that aren't immediately and apparently related to that intellectual life. So she buys a house in the crumbling North Philadelphia community with the thought, I'm going to stay a professor, but I want to help some of my community's problems. And so while her cousin is in Jordan, in the country of Jordan, filming this movie, we see her in North Philadelphia, wondering how can she combine these two interests of hers, the intellectual and the responsibility to the community and the love for the community. The play in some ways looks at the relationship between joy or love and protest. And that's a connection that I'm very interested in terms of music, because one of the things I found growing up and listening to many varieties of Afro-Caribbean music is that you'll be dancing to a great salsa song and you're not even aware, it just sounds like dance music, it feels like dance music, you're not even aware that the lyrics are actually about civil rights or equality. And so there's always been a close connection, I think, between celebration and protest in the communities I grew up in, and I wanted to explore that. So what I do is I take one particular folkloric tradition out of Puerto Rico, which is essentially a troubadour tradition. It's guitar and voice, so it's very accessible to people who are familiar with it and people who've never heard it. And I embody this music in a local musician who also lives in Yasmin's community, and the way that they use song and music to both express their joy and also express some of the social ills that they feel called to try to change step by step. I'm inspired by life, and by my life and my everyday life, both its very familiar and almost mundane components, and its epic and transcendent components, and I find those things commingling in everyday life, and that's how I draw my inspiration. So some of the characters are based on characters I knew. For example, the character of Agustin. He is a troubadour, he is a local guidance counselor at the local high school, and he is based on a dear family friend from Philadelphia who was a big activist in the community and just a big inspiration to young people, a teacher, a sense that a local leader would also be of the local people. His story fed in a lot to my writing of this play. Another local character is named Lefty, who is a homeless man, and he comes over Yasmin's house a lot because she likes to feed her neighbors. She always has pots of food on the stove, and if someone comes in with a hungry belly, she'll feed them. And they tell stories, and they fill each other in on the local news. And Lefty is based on a few locals from Philadelphia who I remember my aunts and my grandmother would kind of take in regularly and give meals to, and brought a different energy into the living rooms. The character of Elliot, who is the Marine, one of the cousins, or the veteran, he is based on my own cousin who, when he was 17, got his parents to sign off and enlisted, and he was in the 1st Marine Battalion to cross the border north from Kuwait into Iraq, and did sustain that same leg injury that my fictional character has. And so there are threads of real life and of my personal truth that I've also fictionalized and taken many liberties with to tell this story. One of the questions I was asking myself, or have been asking myself for many years, and I think I grapple with in this play, is in 2014, when we're so connected virtually, what is the role of protest in our lives anymore for issues that are near and dear to our hearts that we want to give voice to? My mother was a community activist and was engaged in many marches as I grew up, and so it's a fabric of who I am, but I don't think that my generation has completely figured out how to connect in person anymore. So that's one of the questions I think the play invites the audience to grapple with. What do we do with issues of social justice that matter to us now? Is there only online connection? Is there a way that a community gathering still has value? I don't know the answers to those questions. That's why I wrote the play, to kind of articulate the questions more, but certainly that conversation is one I hope that the audiences leave having.